What happens when a friend, someone you've shared your deepest secrets and dreams with, betrays your trust in the worst way possible? Imagine learning that your best friend not only betrayed you, but also took the one thing that mattered most, your heart. This isn't just a story of loss. It's about something much deeper. It's about the pain that comes when the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most. And then, years later, that same friend reaches out, apologizing for the years of betrayal, asking for a second chance, expecting forgiveness. But what if, instead of welcoming them back into your life, you decided to teach them a lesson they would never forget? Life was simple once. Trust was something that came easily, especially with those closest to you. Growing up, friendship was a bond I valued deeply, and I believed that the people I chose to share my life with, especially my best friend, would never betray that trust. Her name was Emily. We had known each other since childhood, our bond unshakable, or so I thought. Our friendship was one of those rare, almost perfect ones. We shared everything: laughter, dreams, secrets, and even our fears. Emily was the kind of person you could rely on for anything. We spent late nights talking about our future, making plans that we believed would last a lifetime. She was always there when I needed advice, someone to confide in, and of course, a constant companion in every adventure we took together. Back then, I thought I had it all: a loving partner, a successful career, and a best friend who stood by me no matter what. Life felt stable, like a well-built foundation I could trust. But everything began to unravel when I started noticing small things. First, there was the odd behavior from Emily. She started acting distant, no longer as invested in our friendship as she once was. At first, I brushed it off as her simply being busy with life. But something felt off. Her texts were less frequent, her calls less engaging, and the once unbreakable bond between us seemed to be drifting further away with each passing day. And then, the inevitable happened. Emily, my best friend, started getting closer to someone I never expected: my boyfriend, Aaron. It started innocently enough, a few hangouts here and there, casual chats about the new things happening in our lives. But things escalated quickly. They began spending more time together, texting each other late into the night. I thought it was harmless, just the nature of friendship. However, in the pit of my stomach, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was going on. One night, after a particularly awkward gathering where they were both acting strangely, I confronted Emily. I asked her if anything was going on between her and Aaron. She laughed it off, claiming I was being paranoid, but there was an unmistakable look in her eyes, a flicker of guilt that I couldn't ignore. Still, I didn't want to believe it. I brushed my suspicions aside, telling myself that maybe I was just overthinking things. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Over the next few weeks, things took a turn. I started noticing little signs that added up. They were spending more time together behind my back, whispering and sharing private jokes that made me feel excluded. It wasn't long before my worst fears were confirmed. Aaron came to me one evening and, with no remorse in his voice, confessed that he had been seeing Emily behind my back. It felt like the world stopped spinning for a moment. My best friend and my boyfriend? Together? How could they betray me like that? The pain was unbearable, like a sharp knife cutting through the trust and love I had placed in both of them. The betrayal wasn't just from one person. It was from two people I had loved and trusted deeply. But what hurt the most wasn't just the fact that they had been together. It was the fact that Emily, the person I thought was my rock, had played a part in shattering my world. She had been the one person I always thought would have my back, and yet in one swift motion, she had chosen Aaron over me, over everything we had built together as friends. The next few months were a blur. I couldn't comprehend how someone I considered family could turn their back on me so easily. The pain was deep, but more than that, I felt humiliated. People knew. Word spread quickly, and I became the subject of whispered conversations and sympathy. My heartbreak was on display for everyone to see, and that only made it worse. Eventually, I moved on. Slowly, I pieced my life back together, rebuilding everything that had fallen apart. But there was always a part of me that wondered what happened to Emily, my former best friend. Did she ever feel guilty for what she had done? Did she even understand the extent of the pain she caused? Then, one day, out of the blue, I received a message from Emily. It was simple, yet the words hit me hard. "I know I messed up. Can you help me?" It was as if nothing had ever happened between us, as if she had just gone on with her life and thought that time could erase everything. I stared at the message for a long time, my mind racing. Here she was, asking for my help after everything she had done to me. Was she truly sorry? Did she understand what she had taken from me? Or was she just in a bad place and hoping I would come to her rescue once again? I thought about it. After everything I had been through, could I really forgive her? Should I give her a second chance? Or was this just another attempt to manipulate me into fixing her problems, as she always had before? As I pondered her message, something inside me snapped. The old version of me, the one who had always been there for Emily, was gone. The new version of me wasn't the person who would let her get away with the betrayal. This time, there would be no forgiveness. I would make her feel every ounce of the hurt she had caused me, just as I had suffered for so long. As soon as I read Emily's message, a rush of emotions flooded over me. I was angry, confused, and deeply hurt. There she was, asking for my help after everything that had happened between us. I didn't know if I should be relieved that she was finally acknowledging what she had done, or if I should be enraged that she thought I would forget the pain she caused me. The trust we once shared had been shattered, and now she was asking for me to pick up the pieces. At that moment, I couldn't ignore the swirl of conflicting feelings inside me. On one hand, I could understand that people make mistakes. Maybe Emily was just trying to make amends. Maybe she truly felt sorry for what had happened. But on the other hand, how could I ever forget what she had done to me? She hadn't just betrayed me once. She had betrayed me in the worst way possible. She had chosen Aaron over me, someone who was supposed to be my closest friend, the one person who was supposed to have my back. And for what? To pursue a relationship with my ex-boyfriend? A relationship that, at the end of the day, was just as much about fulfilling her own desires as it was about betraying my trust. The tension inside me was unbearable. There were so many questions. Did Emily even realize the extent of the damage she had caused? Was her apology sincere? Or was it just a plea for help in a time of crisis? It was as if the emotional weight of her betrayal had been weighing me down for months. And now, with her message, the weight had suddenly intensified. She had done what so many people do when they mess up. They expect forgiveness. But forgiveness wasn't something that could be handed out like that, not after what she had done. I wanted to be the bigger person. I really did. I wanted to be the kind of person who could forgive and move on, who could let go of the past and embrace the future. But every time I tried to imagine doing that, something held me back. Every memory of how things used to be, the late night talks, the laughter, the secrets shared, flashed before my eyes. And with each memory, I couldn't shake the bitter sting of betrayal. Could I just forget everything she had taken from me? Could I really let go of the hurt she had caused? At the same time, I realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't just about letting Emily off the hook. It was about protecting myself. I had spent so much time letting people walk all over me, pretending to be the bigger person, always being the one who would forgive and forget. But this time, things would be different. This time, I wasn't going to just let her come back into my life as if nothing had happened. The way she had left me, as though I didn't matter, had left a mark on me. It wasn't just a friendship that was lost. It was my sense of self-worth, my sense of trust in the people closest to me, and I couldn't just give that up. But there was something else stirring within me, a sense of justice. I had tried to move on from everything that had happened, but I wasn't truly free from it. The wound she had caused was still raw. The idea of her coming to me for help, after everything, felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't that I didn't care about her well-being. It was that I was tired of always being the one who had to pick up the pieces for everyone else. Why should I be the one to fix things for her when she had been the one to destroy everything? How many times had I been there for her when she needed someone, only for her to turn her back on me when I needed her the most. So, what was I going to do? The tension continued to build as I grappled with my emotions. I realized I was facing a choice: continue down the path of forgiveness and let her back into my life, or stand firm, not just for myself, but for everything I had worked so hard to rebuild. The pain from the betrayal was still so fresh, and yet I knew that moving forward meant making a decision that would change everything. It wasn't just about making her feel the consequences of her actions. It was about taking back control of my own life. I had let Emily and Aaron dictate my happiness for far too long. Now it was time for me to reclaim that power. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the decision had already been made. No, I wasn't going to help her. No, I wasn't going to forgive her, not yet at least. She needed to understand the magnitude of what she had done. She needed to face the consequences of her choices. And this time, it wasn't just about revenge, it was about my own healing. The tension in me began to settle, replaced by a newfound determination. I didn't need to prove anything to her or anyone else. This wasn't about getting back at her. It was about protecting myself and making sure she never had the chance to hurt me or anyone else again. I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not this time. As the weight of Emily's message lingered in my mind, it was clear that I had to make a decision. For weeks, I had been going back and forth, questioning whether I could trust her again, whether forgiveness was possible, and whether I was strong enough to let go of the past. But now, as her words echoed in my head, I realized that the time for indecision was over. I wasn't just facing the question of whether or not to help her. I was facing the question of how I would move forward with my own life. The power was now in my hands. The moment I made up my mind, everything started to change. Emily's apology, however heartfelt, felt like a shadow of what had happened. The apology itself couldn't erase the pain, nor could it undo the years of betrayal. What struck me more than her words was the fact that she had the audacity to think that I would just forgive her without understanding the gravity of what she had done. I began to realize that this wasn't about being the bigger person or doing what was right for her. It was about standing up for myself. It became clearer that my choice wasn't going to be about reconciling with her or letting her back into my life. Instead, I would use this moment as an opportunity to take control and create a situation where the tables were turned. Emily had betrayed me when I was at my lowest, and now, when she was the one in trouble, she was reaching out to me. But what I realized was that the moment she took something from me, I lost a piece of my trust in her, a piece that would never come back. I couldn't give her that power again. This time, I was going to reclaim my strength, and in doing so, I was going to make sure that she understood the cost of her betrayal. The first step in taking control was understanding that I didn't owe her anything. I had spent too long feeling like I needed to help her, like I needed to prove that I could be the bigger person. But in the process, I had lost sight of something important: my own worth. If I gave in to her plea for help, it would only reinforce the pattern of putting everyone else's needs above my own. This wasn't just about punishing Emily. It was about reclaiming the space I had lost in my life, the space I had given up to make room for her. As the days passed, I began to formulate a plan. I wasn't going to help her the way she expected. Instead, I would use her request as an opportunity to demonstrate that betrayal has consequences and that some mistakes can't be undone just because someone says, sorry. What Emily didn't understand was that in her attempt to get back into my life, she was unknowingly walking into a trap. I would take action that she never expected, actions that would leave her reeling, unable to make sense of what had just happened. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of empowerment. I knew that what I was about to do would be difficult, but it was necessary. It wasn't about sinking to the level of revenge. It was about standing up for myself and finally putting my own needs and desires first. No longer would I allow myself to be taken advantage of, to be the one who always forgave, always overlooked the pain. This time, Emily would feel the weight of her actions. The decision was made. I wouldn't help her. In fact, I would do everything in my power to make sure she saw exactly how serious this was. She had broken my trust once, and the consequences of that broken trust would come crashing down on her like a tidal wave. She thought she could walk back into my life after all that had happened, thinking that a simple apology would erase everything, but the reality was far different. I wasn't going to let her off the hook this time. I knew this would hurt. I knew that this decision might change everything between us. But at this point, it was clear that something had to give. If I truly wanted to move on from the past and rebuild my life, I couldn't allow myself to be held back by the ghosts of betrayal. Emily needed to learn the consequences of her actions, not through words or a simple apology, but through something that would stay with her, something that would teach her just how deep the wound had gone. The moment I decided not to help her, a weight lifted off my shoulders. It felt like a victory in itself, one small step toward regaining control. The decision didn't come without its challenges, but I knew that it was the right choice. And when the time came, when Emily saw the true cost of her mistake, she would finally understand the price of betraying someone who once considered her a best friend. She would realize that she couldn't simply waltz back into my life, expecting everything to be the same. No, this time the tables had turned. The days leading up to the moment I would reveal everything to Emily were a whirlwind of emotions. I had made the decision to distance myself from her, but still, a small part of me held on to the hope that things could have been different, that maybe we could just go back to the way things were. But I couldn't ignore the reality of what had happened. She had hurt me deeply, and no matter how much time passed, the hurt lingered. When she reached out to me asking for my help, I realized just how little she understood the impact of her actions. It wasn't just about the betrayal, it was about the disregard for everything we had shared as friends. She was now in trouble, and instead of feeling empathy or concern, I felt something else entirely: satisfaction. The kind of satisfaction that comes from knowing that the tables had finally turned. The moment of reckoning came when Emily arrived at my house, visibly anxious yet hopeful that I would simply forgive her and help her like I always had. She stood there at my doorstep with the same pleading look in her eyes that she had always worn in the past. But this time, I wasn't buying it. She thought she could waltz right back into my life, thinking that the same forgiveness and trust would be waiting for her. She couldn't have been more wrong. I didn't open the door immediately. Instead, I let her stand there for a few moments. I let the silence hang in the air, each second stretching longer than the last. She didn't know what was coming. She didn't know that I had already made my decision. I didn't need to rush through this. I needed to make sure she understood the weight of the situation, the same weight that had crushed me all those years ago when she betrayed me for my ex. She didn't understand that the consequences of betrayal were far from over. Finally, I opened the door and stood there, looking at her, but there was no warm smile, no welcome. Instead, I asked her to come inside. As soon as she stepped in, she looked around, expecting things to be the same, but they weren't. My life had changed. I had changed, and so had the dynamics between us. The moment she realized that things were no longer the same, it was written all over her face. There was no going back now. She immediately launched into her apology, as if saying sorry would make everything disappear, as if the years of betrayal could be washed away with a few words. She was so focused on convincing me to help her, she didn't even notice the look of resolve in my eyes. As she spoke, I remained silent, listening to her words, but all I could think about was how much I had changed, how much I had grown, how much I had learned from the pain she had caused. I wasn't that same person who had been vulnerable to her manipulation. I wasn't going to fall for it again. And then it happened. The moment she was dreading. The moment she realized that she wasn't the one in control anymore. I slowly walked over to my desk and pulled out a folder. It wasn't just any folder. It was the folder that contained the documentation of everything she had done to me over the years. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal. It was all there. I had kept records of our conversations, text messages, and emails, evidence of how she had taken my trust and crushed it, how she had taken advantage of my kindness, all while stabbing me in the back. And now, here it was, ready to be exposed. When I placed the folder in front of her, her face turned pale. She immediately tried to backpedal, to explain herself, to beg me to understand. But there was nothing left to say. The evidence was irrefutable. She had stolen not just my ex from me, but had also stolen my peace of mind and my trust. And now, she was going to pay for it. I had taken everything she had done to me and turned it into a plan. She had thought she could get away with everything. She had believed that time would heal the wounds and that I would forgive her. But what she didn't realize was that I had spent years thinking about this moment. I had used that time to rebuild my life, to become stronger, to grow into someone who would never let herself be taken advantage of again. And now it was her turn to learn the hard way. As the reality of the situation sank in, Emily realized what she had done. She understood for the first time that her betrayal had not just affected me, it had destroyed the very foundation of our friendship. And now, the tables had turned. She wasn't the one holding the power anymore. The role reversal had taken place, and she was the one left with nothing. The payback wasn't in any grand gesture. It was in the subtle but unmistakable way I had reclaimed control over my life. The real consequence wasn't about punishing her. It was about showing her that actions have repercussions. It was about making sure that she would never make the same mistake again. By the time she realized what had happened, it was too late. I had already moved on, and she was left with the weight of her own decisions, trapped in the mess she had made. The sweet part wasn't the satisfaction of seeing her in pain. It was the quiet internal satisfaction of knowing that I had stood up for myself, that I had taken my life back into my hands. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking back the power she had once held over me. And now, as she walked away, she knew that I had become someone she would never be able to manipulate again. As the dust settled and Emily left that day, something inside me shifted. For years, I had lived in the shadow of her betrayal, letting it fester in the deepest parts of my heart. But now, that shadow had been lifted. It wasn't about getting even. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about reclaiming my peace, my life, and my strength. Looking back on everything, it was clear to me just how much I had changed since the time when Emily and I were inseparable. We had once been two halves of a whole, sharing secrets, dreams, and plans for the future. But all of that had been shattered the moment she betrayed me. At the time, I had been crushed, unsure of how to move forward. But now, as I stood in the aftermath, I could finally see the bigger picture. The first lesson I learned was that betrayal isn't something that can be erased. The damage was done, and while I could rebuild, I would never be the same person I was before Emily's actions. Trust is something that, once broken, is incredibly hard to repair. The scars she left behind would never disappear, but they had become a part of me, part of the story I would tell to show others how even the deepest wounds could heal over time. It wasn't just about me and Emily anymore. It was about the journey that I had taken in the years since the betrayal. It had been a hard, painful road, but it had also been a road that led to growth, understanding, and empowerment. Through the pain, I had learned to stand up for myself in ways I never thought possible. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece, making sure that every decision I made was one that would bring me closer to the person I had always wanted to be, a stronger, more self-assured version of myself who would never allow someone to control or manipulate me again. Emily's return, though shocking, also made me realize something important. People often believe they can erase the past. They think that time will heal all wounds, that distance will somehow make everything better. But that's not how life works. Once trust is broken, once a person has betrayed you, nothing can make that right. No apology, no gesture, no amount of time. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's lost, it's hard to regain. Emily thought that by reaching out and asking for my help, she could make up for all the years of hurt she had caused. But what she failed to realize was that some wounds leave scars that can never fully heal. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her redemption. I had already found mine. There was also something incredibly empowering in how I had taken control of the situation. The power of not needing someone else's approval or validation became clear to me. For years, I had allowed Emily to have power over me, her actions, her opinions, her betrayal. But in that moment, I had taken it all back. I didn't need her forgiveness, and I didn't need her to validate my feelings. The power to move on, to heal, and to take my life into my own hands was something I had discovered for myself. As time passed, Emily's presence faded further from my life. Her betrayal, though unforgettable, no longer consumed me. I continued to move forward, building stronger relationships with people who valued me for who I was, not who I could be used as. It became clear that some people come into your life for a season, but that doesn't mean they have the right to stay forever. What Emily did wasn't just an action. It was a lesson in how easily trust can be taken for granted and how important it is to protect yourself from people who can't see your worth. In the end, the real victory wasn't in seeing Emily regret her actions. It wasn't in making her pay for her betrayal. It was in how much I had grown from the experience. It was in realizing that my worth wasn't tied to anyone's opinion of me. It was in knowing that I could be strong, independent, and capable, regardless of what anyone else thought or did. The true cost of betrayal was not just about the damage done. It was about the resilience built in the face of it. The lesson learned from all of this was simple, yet profound. Life is full of people who will try to take advantage of you, who will try to use your kindness and trust to their own benefit. But the true power comes not in letting them win, not in allowing them to break you, but in how you rise from the ashes of betrayal. The strength you find in yourself, in your own ability to rebuild, is worth far more than any apology or retribution. So when Emily walked away, she left behind more than just the past we once shared. She left behind a woman who had found her strength, who had reclaimed her life, and who was ready to move forward without fear or hesitation. And that, in the end, was the sweetest form of victory. The consequences of her betrayal had come and gone, but I was still standing, stronger than ever.